world changes soon. Can get a doobie on a plane, but there's Uzis in our schools. Every dude who touched a boob or a booty getting me too. What you expect from the kids who went to Hooters after school? We're all triggered and defensive. We're all racist and we're sexist. We all grew up watching South Park. How are we offended? Now being fat is beautiful. Name a thing that you can't do. Jumping jacks, run a mile, live past 42.
Welcome to the Red Pill Sports and Entertainment Show. I am your host, Albert Apache, and as usual, brought to you by Open Source, Self-Defense, Fitness, and Grappling. Okay, guys, let's go ahead and get into the show. Before we get into the show, let me go ahead and remind you, please like, subscribe, comment down below. It really helped me out. I'd like to do some more live type of things, but unfortunately, particularly mobile, but unfortunately you cannot go live on your mobile device without having at least 1,000 subscribers. So that's kind of the goal at this point. So it really helps out to gain more followers if you like and subscribe, and you kind of share the video with whomever you might think might agree or even disagree and just wants to rant, and I'll go back and forth with them if they like to argue. So anyhow, that's what I got, guys. Let's go ahead and get into the show. So for our first topic of the day, let's go ahead and talk about this sycophant kind of mentality, tribalism that is infecting the MMA / jiu-jitsu community. I talk about this because I guess it was the last show, maybe the show prior, we talked about how Izzy lost to Jan, and you saw an absolute ton of Israel Adesanya fans just fanboying it up. Now, this is not a shot at Izzy, not at all. Izzy's a great martial artist. Of course, people lose. I don't think it takes away from Izzy's ability to go down as one of the greatest, being top 5, maybe even being the GOAT. I think that's still a possibility for him. Okay, so, but that being said, the problem I have is with the fans, right? The fans get out of control. They get into these tribalist little mentalities where somehow Izzy isn't man enough to stand up for himself and the fact that he ran his mouth. And they kind of set themselves into these tribes. And we've seen this kind of, I want to say it's crossed over from jiu-jitsu into MMA. And what am I talking about? Well, for instance, you have people who are Team O.s.s that are getting upset right now. They kind of side with O.s.s, they side with Andre Galvao, so they're upset with Gordon Ryan. People who side with, DDH, and so they're, or DDS, excuse me, and so they're, upset with Galvao. You have people who are gi, you have no gi. I mean, you have all these little factions and tribes within the jiu-jitsu community. And I just want to talk about that a bit today because I think that, some tribalism can be very, very healthy, and it makes things fun as far as competition, right? You definitely want to have your teammates back, if you will, when it comes to competition, right? You want to help your teammate get ready for a competition. You want to root him on while he's there. You don't want to be a bad teammate by going somewhere to another gym or to another academy and giving away game plans and things of that nature, saying, hey, he likes to do this, or he likes to set up by doing X and then doing Y. Hey, if they want to do that kind of research and do that kind of film study, that's on that team to do it. You shouldn't be running around and giving up that information. So while all that makes it really, really fun, there also comes a point in time where I think we have to back away from the tribalism and remember that, I like Galvao. I think he's a cool guy. I like to watch his jiu-jitsu. Uh, I definitely like Gordon Ryan. I think he's a super fun guy. I like a lot of his posts. I like the way he gets under people's skin. But at the end of the day, Gordon Ryan doesn't know me. I don't know Gordon Ryan. I don't know Andre Galvao. I don't know Hickson Gracie. Okay. I don't know Eddie Bravo. I don't know these guys. We're not friends. I don't smoke a bowl with them. I don't drink a beer with these guys. So at the end of the day, the idea that I'm taking somebody else talking smack about them personally, like it's an attack on me, is utterly ridiculous. I'm not a Carlos Jr. I don't know Carlos Jr. Um, I don't know Henner. I don't know Hiron. I I've never trained at the Gracie Academy, so I think people really need to slow down and put the brake on this tribalism when it gets to the point that I see some people online actually wanting to start talking as if they're going to go fight or, go, I'm going to go roll with you and I'm going to strangle you and I'm going to show you. Like, really? Over guys that have no idea who you are? They really don't even know who you are. Like, I can understand being that protective of the guys that maybe are in your own academy, that are in your own gym, right? Uh, the academy that you roll at. I could understand being that protective of those guys, that defensive of those guys. But to be so protective of a brand, because essentially that's what it is. You're being protective of a brand is ridiculous. And I get it. It can be fun, kind of like the Chevy versus Ford kind of thing versus Ram. I get that that can be fun. And I'm not saying, that lighthearted bantering can't be fun. That's fine. I'm talking about people who seriously talk about they want to fight you because you're not a Gracie Baja fan, right? They want to fight you because you're not a Hickson Gracie fan, because you don't think that Keenan Cornelius is the best ever. They want to fight you. And the reality is, I think that a ton of the guys, particularly those that do not wrap their entire, how would I say, their entire personality, their whole entire identity into their jiu-jitsu, I don't think that they would want you to do that either. Like, I really don't think that they think that's called for. Now, I understand that some of this gets a little bit touchy when we're talking somebody like Keenan. When Keenan talks about American Jiu-Jitsu, and I know that rubs a lot of the Jiu-Jitsu community the wrong way. Now, that being said, I am kind of on the side of Keenan Cornelius and others that believe that there's nothing wrong with calling the jiu-jitsu style, or whatever you want to, however you want to put it, calling it American Jiu-Jitsu. Calling the branch or the idea or the style of jiu-jitsu that is now being done American Jiu-Jitsu. I don't think that there's a problem with that. And I'm going to tell you why. Simply put, you had Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. And then from Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, you got Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Now, those of us who know the story, I'm not going to go into it very deeply here. Essentially, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu name came out of, copyright, trademark type of issues. Now, all that being said, once Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu came to America, the United States, it changed. And I think that jiu-jitsu changed enough well it's been in America that there's nothing wrong. I mean, it's just the same as calling it Brazilian jiu-jitsu, even though it came from Japan. So I don't have a problem with American jiu-jitsu. And you'll see, like, for instance, this is one of the ones where you're starting to develop these tribalist kind of ideas, where it's like, well, if you think American jiu-jitsu is real, you're not. That's not real jiu-jitsu. Well, when did the Brazilian jiu-jitsu become the real jiu-jitsu and Japanese jiu-jitsu became the fake jiu-jitsu? Like, when did that happen? You know, and so it's just one of those things where I feel like, people need to take a step back. For instance, Hodger here. I don't think Hodger knows you from, anybody else. He might be able to tell you roll jiu-jitsu or grapple if he looks at your ears and you got some cauliflower ear, and maybe would feel some kinship with you instantaneously just because, hey, we're both grapplers, talk to you for a minute, but he has no idea who you are. Galvao doesn't know who you are. These guys have no idea who you are. And so I really want the jiu-jitsu community to kind of think about that and start thinking about maybe it's time to take a step back away from so much of this tribalism and say, hey, man, to the point where I'm wanting to physically hurt you because you don't support my guy or you support a guy who doesn't like my guy is comedic and just really, I think, needs to stop. I'm lucky here in the Phoenix metro area. Uh, you have some bad blood between particular instructors. That being said, I've always been welcome at any open mat that I've showed up to, regardless if there's been a mat fee or not to roll there. I've always been welcome, and you know, I think that that's fantastic. I really do. I really love the idea that you can show up at an academy, be like, yeah, I rolled before. Yes, I'm blue belt, purple belt, brown belt. Even, hey, I'm a black belt. But I'm just looking to get some rolls in different looks, and you can show up to an open mat. And for the most part, here in the Valley, you will be welcome with open arms. I don't know if it's like that everywhere else. I really don't. Uh, I get the feeling from things that are said online and the tribalism that goes on that maybe it's not like that so much in New York or California, but maybe different. Maybe I am taking too serious the comments that I see online. And if that's what you think, man, let me know, comment down below. But I just think that it's getting out of hand. I mean, here's the thing. Gordon Ryan is a big boy. He runs a ton of smack. A ton. If Gordon Ryan gets choked out by Wagner in this upcoming match at Who's Number One, and he gets choked out in 30 seconds, even though I like the guy and I'm a fan, I'm not going to want to fight somebody who ridicules Gordon Ryan over that. He brought it on himself. So I guess that's what I got, guys. I really, hope that, we don't spread that kind of tribalism and kind of, self-destructive mentality to white belts. I think they're so brand new. They really can benefit from having more open-mindedness. Even the gi versus no gi argument. I mean, it's fun to have. I'm not going to say that I don't engage in it. I definitely do. But I do all that, tongue in cheek. So, keep it light. Have fun, guys. But at the end of the day, remember, Gordon Ryan has no idea who you are, whether you're a fan or whether you're a hater. All right, man. That's what I got. Let's go ahead and move on to our next topic. All right, guys. Let's go ahead and get into this show. So, first and foremost, I just wanted to get some documentation down. The "see, I told you so" type of documentation. So, remember that last week I talked about what it meant by signing Prescott, by overpaying Dak Prescott. That essentially what the signal was being said by Dak Prescott commanding the kind of contract that he did, that essentially he has launched himself into the upper stratosphere of quarterbacks, and that he now has the same expectations as those quarterbacks. Meaning that if he does not win Super Bowl, the signing is an absolute failure. The signing of Dak Prescott is a failure, and Dak Prescott's measurement for success is a Super Bowl championship. At the very least, you would have to say it'd be a Super Bowl appearance, but for most Cowboy fans, it's going to be a Super Bowl victory. And lo and behold, that message has come through clearly to the Dallas Cowboy organization and all the talking heads in the press that, kept wanting to defend Dak. And so now the expectations of Dak are trying to be managed. And, first of all, this is not a shot at Dak Prescott. This is a shot at the talking heads in the media that essentially tell you ridiculous things in order to sell airtime, like that Dak should, he deserved the money that he got. Yet, as a fan, when you put two and two together and what that means, now they want to roll it back because they knew they were wrong. They knew that Dak did not deserve the contract that he got. He did not deserve the pay that he got. They know that the impact of this contract on the Dallas Cowboys' foreseeable future is horrific. They understand that everything that every single critic of Dak Prescott and the amount of money he wanted was absolutely right, which was that, look, Dak is a very good quarterback. He is a B plus quarterback. Yes, he's a great leader of the franchise, but you need to pay him B plus quarterback money because he is not a force multiplier. Okay, he can be a cog in the machine. But no, they told you he was the gemstone, the keystone to any success that the Dallas Cowboys would have. So here we have on Fansided, about 1 week later, this is came out a few days after the announcement that Dak got his contract. And sure enough, we have Richard Caldwell, just one example, writing a piece on how we need, number one, taking shots at Jimmy Johnson for Jimmy Johnson stating the obvious when Jimmy Johnson, quote unquote, pushed the narrative that Prescott will not be able to carry the team to a Super Bowl without having great players around him. Now, first of all, that's not a narrative, okay? That is a statement of very popular opinion. That is pretty much everybody's assessment, everybody's educated assessment of Dak Prescott. And then he tries to be a smart guy and he's like, well, the question that follows is, when has that ever happened? Look, my guy, it has happened. It's happened plenty of times where the quarterback is the most important piece, the most notable piece, the piece that will be seared into your brain for the rest of time for a particular team winning the Super Bowl. For instance, this past Super Bowl, what will be seared into your mind? Tom Brady. The Super Bowl before, who will be seared into your mind? Patrick Mahomes. So what essentially Jimmy Johnson was saying, and what everybody who's being honest when they assess Dak Prescott is saying, is that he is not a force multiplier. He's not a force multiplier. Okay, you have had plenty of quarterbacks who have gone to the Super Bowl. And then you have another handful of quarterbacks who have actually won the Super Bowl, who are not great, quote unquote, great quarterbacks. They're not quarterbacks that were ever in the top 5 during the time they were in the league. And some maybe not even in the top 10. So it has happened. It's happened numerous times. But Richard goes on to talk about what it is to be Dak Prescott in the league. And he says at the very end, he wraps it up. And this sums up how they are trying to manage the expectations of Dak Prescott. Winning the NFL title is not Dak Prescott's job alone. That is a team goal. Now, in the history of the NFL, in the Super Bowl era, let's even say in the past, we'll even give Dak the benefit of the doubt, and we'll say in the past 20 years, what quarterback has had that scapegoat, has had that excuse? Well, it's not the quarterback's job. It's a team goal. It's a team goal. And so we can't hold the quarterback completely accountable for this. Since when? When did this become, an ejection seat, a safe haven for quarterbacks? The answer is it's never been. It's never been. But they want to make it one for Dak now. And it's because they were completely wrong in their assessment in going after Jerry Jones, in hammering Jerry Jones for not paying him. The reality is the entire time that Jerry Jones was sticking to his guns and the Cowboy organization front office was sticking to their guns, they were doing the right thing. Now, why did they sign Dak? I mean, maybe there are some other things at play that we didn't know about, and they decided, hey, this is the best we're going to get right now. We need to take, this is the best quarterback that's available to us right now that's not going to cause us to be in limbo for the next 2 years, so let's sign him. Maybe they knew something that we don't know. That could be. But the reality is that Dak did get overpaid. And Jerry Jones said as much. Jerry Jones said as much. After receiving his mammoth contract, Prescott's job is to do his job. If he does that job to the best of his ability, he will have done his part to help the Cowboys add a 6th Lombardi trophy to their mantle. So you see how, if Dak does his job, and he just does his job as well as he can, because he can't affect any other part of the game, then he's done his part. Oh, come on. That is the beauty and the weakness of being a quarterback in the NFL. The game is so quarterback friendly, particularly now, right? Particularly in the era that we are in now. The game is so quarterback friendly. Dare I say there is a set of rules for every other position on the field, and then there's a set of rules for the starting quarterback. I mean, I believe that to be true. I don't think the quarterbacks play under the same rule set that the rest of the team plays. And if you are a very good quarterback, if you're an A-plus quarterback, if you're a force multiplier quarterback, you can control both sides of the ball or impact both sides of the ball, offense and defense. How? Because on offense, of course, you're there, you're the leader, you're, orchestrating the offense while it's on the field. And how you dictate the defensive side of the ball is if you're able to put points up on the board, you can mask a lot of problems on your defense. And I keep saying this, and I don't understand why people don't seem to understand this. When you are a force multiplying quarterback and you can put up 25, 35, 45, especially as you start to hit the 30s and above, you start putting those kind of points on the board consistently, it definitely alters what the other defense and the other team wants to do. So not only do you put pressure on the other defense, but you put pressure on the other team's offense, and you make the other team's offense push and stretch and reach way too much. What does that do for your defense? Is it puts your defense in a position to capitalize on mistakes, because mistakes are going to be more prevalent. And there you have it. Now, is Dak Prescott that quarterback? To this point, no, he has not been. And here's the thing. With all the weapons that Dak has, like I stated last week, he has to be. And these guys know it. And that's why they're trying to mitigate the expectations of Dak. Also last week, really quick, I talked about how it was now or never with Dak Prescott and Dallas Cowboys. And I said that essentially they were going to have to strike while the iron was hot. I predicted that they were going to go into the NFL draft, that they were going to start looking to shore up the depth, particularly on the offensive line, even though they have needs on defense. And we all know that their glaring needs were defensive backs in their secondary. And I said that, well, with given what they have right now, they pretty much have to go out and find a way to draft offensive linemen. Well, they signed Keanu O'Neal to a $5 million deal. And what does this say about where the Cowboys are at? What is the signal that they're sending us here? Is that it looks like they are going to try to fill their holes in free agency for the defense. So their defensive holes are going to be filled via free agency. So I think this is a strong signal that I was absolutely right. I mean, time will tell, but I'm putting my shot out there. I'm reinforcing. I'm telling you guys what I think is going on, and the time is now. The Cowboys need to go after the Super Bowl run this year. Definitely no later than next year, but this is the year. If you don't do it this year, your chances are already diminishing. You cannot maintain all the stars that you have in the stable right now with their current construct of their contracts. You just can't. So, it's just unsustainable. So, like I said, a little bit of I told you so first before we start, because, if I'm wrong, I'll come out and I'll make videos. I'll say that I was wrong. But when it looks like I'm right, I'm going to say, hey, look, I'm right. I was right about these things. So that's what we got, guys. Let's go ahead and move on. So staying in the NFL for a minute, guys, let's talk about Deshaun Watson and him being sued for sexual assault. I think this is a very, very telling article as far as you need to read somewhat in between the lines here. So it was maybe a week ago, a little bit before, that there was breaking news that Deshaun Watson had been sued for in civil court for sexual assault and damages, for that. The lawyer that was representing the plaintiffs is Tony Busby. Now, interesting to note about the entirety of what happened here. There's a couple of things that are interesting to me. Number one is the timing. I mean, you cannot be a up-to-date, NFL fan and not feel like the timing is a bit tricky and suspicious, given that, you know, Watson has been asking for a trade and trying to force his way out of Houston. Now, what would the Houston Texans gain out of this position? And a ton of people say, excuse me, guys, a ton of people are saying right now, you know, well, the Texans don't get anything out of this. I beg to differ. I beg to differ. I think the Texans get a distracted Watson, which, let's be honest, the Texans have shown that they really don't care about winning football games by the teams that they've put together in the last couple of years, some of the moves that they've made. Now, some people might say, hey, that was a super class act of letting J.J. Watt go. Maybe it was a super class act, but it was a stupid business move. You might not have gotten much, but you could have traded J.J. Watt for something. And let's face it, the cupboards are pretty bare there. So they could have traded for something. As far as, you know, Deshaun Watson goes, he's distracted. He's not calling out the team. Oh, and on top of all that, it makes other teams not interested in wanting to trade for Watson, right? So they're going to look and they're going to be like, man, Deshaun, yeah, he's a great talent, but oof, if we traded for him right now, we're essentially saying that we're willing to accept that he might not play this year, or play only, you know, a portion of the year. So maybe not the best idea. So I think that the idea that the Texans don't get anything out of, you know, this particular story, or, this particular situation, you know, it is just not true. Now, I understand, you know, a lot of people say, oh, conspiracy, conspiracy, conspiracy. Look, and, you know, you're talking about a conspiracy theory. Look, all I'm going to say is, most of the time, the most obvious, easiest explanation for things is usually what happened. So, you know, the top three things to believe here, right? The top three things to believe here is, number one, there is some conspiratorial elements to this story because the timing seems odd, right? It's obvious, so that's super obvious. That you know, Deshaun, you know, that his is about money, okay, and you know, there wasn't a assault per se, and I'll get into that in a second. And lastly is that Watson did do these things, and he is a sexual predator. I mean, those are the three options that are the most obvious and easiest to believe. Now we're going to get into it. So let's continue on, and let me give a red pill alert. If you have not started your daily dose of red pills, and you are not on a steady red pill diet, you may want to take one now, because some of the things I'm going to say about this particular case may rub people the wrong way who are, you know, ultra SJWs, that are, you know, ultra feminist, man-hating, believe all women, hashtag me too. If you're those type of people, you're going to have to take a red pill for some of the things I'm about to talk about. So there you have it. There was your warning. And here's the thing, guys. It sounds as if from Deshaun Watson that there was a lawyer, or excuse me, that the lawyer, Tony Busby, actually filed the civil suit. And he came to Watson, approached Watson, I'm assuming via his lawyer, asking for a settlement first, then filing a civil lawsuit, and announcing a civil lawsuit via Twitter. Essentially putting pressure, public pressure, on Watson. In my opinion, He did this to bait Watson into saying something that he could use in court that was in any way could be construed as being untrue. He may have gotten what he wanted because Watson did reply. He did reply to that, and he wrote that, it had come to his attention that, a social media post by a publicity-seeking plaintiff's lawyer, I recently became aware of a lawsuit that has apparently been filed against me. I have not yet seen the complaint, but I know this: I have never treated any woman with anything other than the utmost respect. The plaintiff's lawyer claims that this isn't about money, but before filing suit, he made a baseless six-figure settlement demand, which I quickly rejected. Unlike him, this isn't about money for me. It's about clearing my name. I look forward to doing that. So, and there's a screenshot of his tweet. Now, here's the thing, guys. People are talking about if these allegations are true, okay? If these allegations are true, that Watson is going to face significant, penalties. But here's the thing. It doesn't matter if they're true or not. And I think that this lawyer, Tony Busby, understands that. He understands that the NFL has set a precedent where he has put all the pressure on Watson with simply finding a plaintiff that is willing to testify to that in civil court. Now, understand something. The way that this was done was completely backwards to how things are usually done when you have some type of criminal activity. Meaning, generally speaking, what happens is criminal charges are filed or pressed. You go to the police or law enforcement and, you say, hey, I want to file charges against this person for X, Y, and Z assault. The police then do an investigation, and then those files are then, you're charged with those particular crimes, and then you go through a trial, a criminal trial. And then if things don't necessarily, there's some really strong evidence, but things don't work out, then you go into a civil suit, and then usually the person does a civil suit, and then of course you go all the way, then you jump into a settlement. And that's generally how these things, how they go, right? That's the general process. In this case, Tony Busby went completely opposite, in the opposite direction. He asked for a settlement first, then he filed the civil lawsuit, and now there is talks of, well, we're going to, the findings that we come up with, we're going to turn those over to, the Houston police, and there may be a criminal investigation as well. Now, here's the thing. Why would you do that? People don't understand that you can lose, or excuse me, let me rephrase that. A defendant can win and clear their name, okay, in a criminal court proceeding and still lose a civil action lawsuit. So a court can find you not guilty of any type of crime in a criminal court and then find you guilty enough so the appearance is enough that you lose in a civil suit court case. That can happen. Now, what do we know about what the NFL has done to incentivize NFL players to play this game of extortion and pay for a settlement? Well, we don't have to go very far. Let's go back to 2018 when Ezekiel Elliott was given a 6-game suspension on a report on an allegation of domestic abuse. And the signal that the NFL sent to the rest of the league was, it doesn't matter if you're guilty or not. It doesn't even matter if the person making the allegations is likely doing so out of malicious intent for retribution. Let me remind you that in the Ezekiel Elliott case, the NFL investigator found the allegations to be baseless, said that there was no evidence to support the allegations, and to the contrary, even said that there was in fact evidence that this could have been done out of a retaliatory type nature, motivation, in order to cause harm to Ezekiel Elliott and his career. The police departments, the metropolitan law enforcement offices that were involved in the different areas where this was done found also that there was no basis to the allegations. So we can look at this and we can know that quite clearly the NFL has sent a message that you do not have to be guilty. You do not have to be guilty for you to have to pay a penalty in the NFL. So it's incentivized allegations because it's incentivized the players to go along with this type of game. Now, I'm not saying that nothing happened with Deshaun Watson. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that clearly we've incentivized going after players and making false allegations. We've incentivized it. So it's not just a matter of whether or not these allegations are true, but it also is a question of whether or not Deshaun Watson wants to resolve this quickly and get out of it with a small suspension, or if he wants to fight it and ends up with a bigger suspension. But believe me here, Deshaun Watson will face a suspension of some type because it soils the shield. And what the NFL has said is that they value the shield and what the shield looks like over truth, over justice. They don't care. If it looks like it could make the NFL look bad, if there's any appearance that it can make the NFL look bad, the NFL is going to bring down the hammer. And now it's put us in this very odd position, right? And you notice the NFL network is really trying to brush this under, the rug. They've talked about it, but they don't spend the time on it. The ESPN outlets, this and that and the other, they're not spending a whole ton of time on this, and really this is one of the biggest stories in the NFL. The amount that this is going to affect the NFL. This is not just going to affect the NFL like next year and whether or not Deshaun Watson is going to play in the Houston Texans. Okay, that it affects that, but it also affects the entire quarterback carousel tree. Are quarterbacks getting moved? Are they getting traded? It affects rules and ripples within the NFL. You want to talk about player and team relations, this is huge. Now I understand it's 22 women at this point, and that makes it really tough to believe that Deshaun Watson is telling the 100% truth, and that there's not some kind of skeleton in the closet. That being said, it's also very, very telling that this is a lawsuit and that money was asked for first and then a lawsuit, and then we might get a criminal investigation rather than the other way around. I'm just saying. It is questionable. So there are huge ramifications. NFL conduct policy. I mean, there's so many ramifications to this one story. And if it comes out, if it comes out that there's some type of thing where this is extortionary type of behavior, if it comes out that, let's say of the 22 alleged victims, let's say 18 were some type of consensual, no coercion, no pressure. Hey, I got a crush on you, I'm a massage therapist, and I want to give you a happy ending because I want to say I gave Deshaun Watson a happy ending, right? And it turns out that, the other ones, well, yeah, I said yes, or no, I never actually said no, but I never actually said yes. And he continued, and yes, I kissed him back, but kissing him back, it doesn't mean that I want the next step. And it's something like that, some kind of ridiculousness like that. And Deshaun Watson, turns out to be like a horn dog, which, I mean, what 27-year-old isn't a horn dog? But let's just say he is. It's going to put a lot of pressure on the NFL to change its personal conduct policy, because the NFL has decided that it's going to step into the criminal investigation world and dole out punishments regardless of whether or not somebody is guilty or innocent. And let's be real, they started doing it because of the SJWs of the world, because of the wokeness. People don't realize that this woke culture has been around for a very long time, and this started years back, and it was in reaction to the Ray Rice situation. People reacted to that, even though they had no context. All they saw was the 5-second clip of Ray Rice smacking that female in the elevator. They never played for you any other part of that video. They never talked to you about, well, what was going on. So then they decided they were going to make a reaction. And here's the thing. This is why you never win when you apologize, when you, backtrack, whatever, take action to pacify the woke culture, the SJWs. You never win because it's never enough. It's never enough. And the goalposts just get moved. The goalposts just move back. That's all that happens. So this is a huge story, and the NFL really needs to figure out how they're going to deal with this. And they're going to have to, at some point in time, the NFL is going to have to address this a little bit more seriously, because it is a very big deal. Okay, guys, that's what I got for the NFL and NFL news. We're going to go ahead and wrap up this segment, and then we'll come right back. Okay, guys, so pretty big news coming out this week. Multiple sources. Gordon Ryan is going to be competing in one championship. He did sign with one championship. He did go on to give some further details. since the 22nd is when the story broke. This came out the 23rd, which is today. And essentially, Gordon Ryan, talks about the fact that he's signed with one championship, that in fact, if he does make the transition to MMA, that he will be debuting with one championship. Let's see. So he says, as many of you already know, I just signed a huge deal with At One Championship. The matches will be grappling matches with MMA on the table if I choose to go that route. Right now, my main focus is on ADCC 2022. But if I choose to fight MMA eventually, my new home at One will be where I debut. I am very excited to see my fans in other parts of the world, but also to rebrand myself as one of the best fence wrestlers of all time. Now, some people may have read that and not really understand what he's trying to say, and they're probably looking up, what the heck is a fence wrestler? What he's talking about is using a cage. Now, a lot of times, I've said this in the past before, Khabib is a great wrestler, but he's not the best wrestler in the world. He actually doesn't even have the best wrestling in MMA, but he has the best octagon cage-centric wrestling. He's developed a cage-centric wrestling style where he leverages the cage as a tool in his arsenal. Okay, this is something that nobody else has really focused on, and it looks like Gordon understands that he's been studying Khabib, and I think he is going to try to replicate the dominance of the cage style wrestling and grappling, but even more devastating, probably from a submission standpoint. I just think that this is fantastic. Let's continue. I've managed to outpace the competition in the open. So wrestling the fence will present new challenges for me, which is very exciting. I also want to take a second to thank at Yad Chatari for taking the time to personally talk to me about making this deal happen. I am insanely busy on a daily basis, so I can't imagine how busy he must be. Him taking time out of his day to chat with me shows me that he wants to be more than a business deal, but a partnership. I look forward to pushing One and Grappling to new heights. Okay, so, here's the thing. Could Gordon Ryan make a transition to MMA? Absolutely. Can he? That's not even a question. That's kind of a ridiculous question. But the actual question I think that we're really asking is, if he made the transition to MMA, how well would he do? I think that this comes back to a very basic kind of understanding. If Gordon, he's fairly young, if he took his time and he learned some striking, he learned how to close the distance in, a couple of different ways, namely off of counters and also off of entries using strikes. So either from countering strikes or from initiating strikes to make angles to get to the takedown. Absolutely, Gordon Ryan could do very well in MMA. He could do very well. Now, it would also be a matter of him taking his time. What is his approach? Is he going to try to hyperspeed his career and jump, going from maybe low-level fighters in one championship and jumping all the way up, as fast as possible in, let's say, 10 fights, he's going to be trying to make a UFC debut. If he does that, I feel like his ability to do well in MMA are going to be diminished. Here's the reality, guys, is that MMA is one of those things where the pace and the speed is much, much different. The intensity level is much, much different than in a grappling match. Now, I can't say that 100% for professionals, but from what I gather from the guys that I've known that have, fought MMA matches, that have fought jiu-jitsu matches and have done both, the intensity level, the speed at which, and from rolling with guys who do MMA, the speed at which and the way that they grab, submissions and even the tempo is so much different than a grappling match. Not to mention, Gordon tends to, right now, he's been playing a lot of guard, so there would have to be a certain level of breaking away from playing guard and butt scooting, if you will, into being able to enter from his own feet, right? And being able to close that distance to get to the clinch. And that therein would lie the issue. I've never seen Gordon Ryan box or kickbox. So who knows if he has a chin, right? That's also another question. Does he have a chin? I think that one of the things that people discount about Khabib is the fact that he has a pretty good chin. I mean, he's taken some solid strikes from some very good strikers, and wasn't, although he might have been stunned, he wasn't rocked where he was stumbling around. He was probably stunned, maybe a bit hurt against Michael Johnson, but, still had the wherewithal to do what he had to survive and get through that moment of time where he was stunned. So I think people discount how good a chin Khabib actually has. Now, does Gordon Ryan, at whatever weight class he chooses to compete, does he have that same chin? Now, given Gordon Ryan's frame, what he seems to compete at, I would say Gordon Ryan's probably going to be competing at 170 pounds, right? That's where I think he would be. I don't think we're talking middleweight. I think we're talking welterweight. I think it would be more natural, easier for him to cut weight to welterweight and be comfortable. I think middleweight is just a bit too heavy for Gordon Ryan on an MMA competition scale. I think he's going to feel the quickest, the most powerful. I think he's going to feel like there is a smaller power and strength advantage at 170 pounds than at 185. That's just my personal opinion. Okay. So I think the question is really, if Gordon is going to move into MMA, is he going to take his time or is he not going to take his time? If he takes his time, I think Gordon makes a significant impact in MMA. I think that jiu-jitsu makes a stunning return as being quote-unquote unstoppable in MMA for its snapshot in time. Now, here's the thing. This is something that brings me back. And Khabib's kind of on my mind here with the whole retirement thing and everything. And now, of course, with Gordon Ryan wanting to talk about possibly doing MMA, and with Gordon also talking about, doing fence wrestling. Kind of has been keeping Khabib on my mind. Should Gordon Ryan take his time and not rush his MMA career? Will we give him the same credit that we seem to have heaped upon Khabib? People don't really look at Khabib's record and examine it closely. If you examine Khabib's record very closely, you'll see that a huge bulk of his wins prior to the UFC were against opponents that he was clearly head and shoulders better than just by record and experience alone. He fought a lot of guys early on that were 0-0, 0-1, 0-2, 1-2, 1-1. He fought a ton of guys that had that type of record in his, 0 through, let's say, 10 matches. Okay. And even as he gained more and more momentum, he wasn't fighting a ton of undefeated fighters. It wasn't like he was 10-0 facing another 10-0 fighter. It wasn't like he was, 15-0 facing another 15-0 fighter. He was, he brought himself up, and rightly so, and very intelligently. I don't want this to be skewed as I am somehow dogging Khabib, because I'm not. It's very, very smart strategy. It's actually a strategy I wish more MMA fighters would develop so that we could see the best versions of themselves, right? But that being said, it is kind of throwing shade at the people that want to elevate Khabib as the greatest of all time above John Jones, because they don't want to take it into context. Where did those first 15 wins come from versus where did the first 15 wins of John Jones come from? So without getting too far into that, let me just say, are we going to give Gordon the same kind of accolades? Because I think that the mainstream media, the mainstream sports media will not, because Gordon is just too brash. I mean, let's face it. If Gordon started heel hooking and choking people out, triangle choking, just destroying people in MMA via submission, to where he was the way that Conor McGregor was knocking people out, right? In the same kind of dominant fashion, same type of quickness. My goodness, the brashness of Gordon Ryan talking, wow, it would be amazing. It would be amazing, and I think the media would be looking for his fall. So I don't think he would get those same accolades, but it would be interesting to see. So that's what I got, guys. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. I know it's loud in the background. I apologize for that. Got kids class going on in the background. Had to open up for that. Coach is taking care of that now. Thank you guys for listening. We'll go ahead and we'll move on to the next subject. Okay, guys. So I just realized we are way over time, was doing the editing and putting everything together, and realized we were just out of time. So we'll have to wrap it up for the week. Thank you very much for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment down below. Remember, the goal is to get to that 1,000 subscribers so we can start doing some go live stuff and have some good times. Anyhow, that's what I got. Next week, we'll be looking and reviewing some of the matches that are going on this upcoming weekend. The Who's Number One, I believe, is coming up this weekend. So we'll talk about that. Of course, the main event, we'll have to review that and talk about that. And then also, we'll get into some more masculinity and jiu-jitsu and how they tie together. Try to coach up some of these young men, guys. There's so much positive masculine role models in jiu-jitsu, and we really need to take that responsibility seriously and take some of these young men, particularly like the teenage boys, under our wing and make sure that we're teaching them exactly what their value is. So we might talk a little bit about that in the next episode. So until then, remember, be practical, be purposeful, get fit with a purpose, guys.
Kids who went to Hooters after school. We're all triggered and defensive. We're all racist and we're sexist. We all grew up watching South Park. How are we offended? Now being fat is beautiful. Name a thing that you can't do. Jumping jacks, run a mile, live past 42. Man, it used to be cool to just flip a bird to the system, and now it's trendy to be triggered and pretend you're a victim. It's my race, it's my weight, it's because I'm a Christian. I hate the internet and anyone who has an opinion. And everybody angry if you say white. Okay, fine. Pass me the brush and I'll paint my face to the shades right. Let's talk about abortion. Sorry, tell me how this works. Bacteria is life on Mars, but a heartbeat isn't life on Earth? Weird. People are so stupid.